Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of just purely public Q&A. If there's not going to be any questions, I'm going to just go over Napoleon. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the Ask a Question button. Other than that, we can jump right into Napoleon unless anyone has any questions to start us off. Stream's kind of early, which makes sense, so there's not that many people today. But yeah. Here are social medias, please check them out. Right, if anyone has some Q&A to start us off? Nope. Alright, so I'll jump right into Napoleon. So then I'll go over Napoleon's early years, the domestic reforms, his Napoleon Code, limitations of women's rights, and foreign affairs. So Napoleon, some key things to know about Napoleon was he claimed to defend the ideals of the French Revolution. He imposed French control over much of the European continent, which provoked a nationalistic reaction. He was the first consul and emperor, and he took a bunch of domestic reforms while he took away some rights, and he maintained impulses behind like a facade of representative institutions. So he made to the public, he made the government look made it look representative, but actually he was just controlling everything. He used different military tactics, which allowed him to exert control over much of the European continent, and he spread the ideals of the French Revolution. And as a result of his expansion, it created nationalist responses. So he was born to a minor noble family on an island of, of Corsica, which was under French control, one of 8 children. At the age of 10, his father sent him to military school in France. He was poor and withdrawn. He didn't talk. At 17, he became a second lieutenant in the French army. At the time, he was given the name Little Corporal. And at age 24, he helped capture the city of Toulon, which got him promoted to a general. Bonaparte became master map reader. With He was able to visualize terrain from 2D maps. In 1796, he was given a small army, command of a small army, and sent to Italy to spread the ideals of the French Revolution. He told the soldiers, almost naked and fed, the government owes you, but they can't pay you. And he said that I will lead you. Soldiers, you lack courage and steadfastness. In 1796 to 1797, he conquered most of northern Italy, France. He liked governing from this, like he got experience and liked it. And then he turned his eyes to Egypt. It was a major source of British wealth, a lot of gold and such. Um, he took scholars to study the Rosetta Stone. He defeated the Egyptian armies in the Great Battle of the Pyramids in 1798, but at sea, the British had the upper hand, and they were able to destroy the French. When plague broke out among his troops, and news came that the French government was in disarray, he left his troops and returned to France and got a hero's welcome. So he abandoned his troops just to get that welcome. Do we have any questions? No, not yet. All right. With this government being in disarray, he launched a successful coup. Then he proclaimed himself the first council of the three-member consulate, the new governing body he created. He canceled the assembly. Then in 1800, he led his army against Austrian forces in Italy and won a significant victory. This cemented his power. He signed peace treaty with England In 1802, he made himself the Council of Life, and then in 1804, he called himself Napoleon I, Emperor of France. He had the Pope come to France to crown him, and then he was also he had himself proclaimed King of Italy as well. For the here's the image of that merit system. Napoleon created a centralized government, which, like his army advancement, is based on merit and not on ancestry. Despite the fact that he practiced nepotism, he created an efficient bureaucratic system with capable officials. Like many dictatorships in history, Napoleon operated a complex success with a secret police. Uh, some people were assassinated just on suspicion that they're harboring like anti-government to send a message to future plotters who might actually do action. Uh, she restricted freedom of the press. Uh, each one is required to have a censor staff out of the four major museums. He had created a central bank, a new tax code, and a sewer system, and he invited back nobles were invited back safely, and they were given government officials to make them happy as well. Then was the Concordat of 1801, was an agreement between the Pope and Napoleon. The church was reestablished in France. The papacy renounced claims of the church property being seized during the revolution, and Napoleon was allowed to nominate bishops, but the Pope had the power to dispose of these bishops. And Napoleon gained more because from this agreement because it legitimized the revolution. Without making the Catholicism was declared the religion of the majority of the Frenchmen, without making it the official state religion. And then he himself, so like they weren't mandatory religion, like there was no mandatory religion. Then he himself was devoid from faith. All right, next we have the Legion of Honor, which is from 1802. This is given to exceptional service for the state. Then we have the Louisiana Purchase. So he sold this territory to the United States at the time. And now we have the reform in education. So under Napoleon in 1801, there was a state-supported educational system. It enrolled the most talented students from age 10 to 16 with the idea that one day they would be leaders in the army and government. There was a great emphasis on patriotism in the schools, which increased in the empire. And there was a curriculum including languages, modern literature, science, and all of the studies needed for a liberal education. Then we have the Napoleonic Code, which was established a collection of laws governing people, property, and procedures. He replaced discriminatory and confusion older traditions with uniform legal system. It recognized the equality of all citizens and became a model for many European countries. The Civil Code for 1804 granted middle class equality under the law and safeguarded their right to own property. He limited women's rights. They had no political rights. They lost many of the gains they made, and it reestablished the power of the male in the family. And here are some examples of that. All right, then we have the Napoleonic Wars. Does anyone have any other questions? No? All right, I'll just continue on. In 1802, he defeated the Second Coalition. Austria had retaken Italy, while Napoleon was in Egypt. Napoleon won it back and annexed the land. In 1804, defeated the Third Coalition: Britain, Russia, Austria, and Sweden. In the winter of 1805, he attacked and inflicted a crushing defeat on the Alliance at Auschwitz. Here, he reformed into the Confederation. He dismantled and took these countries, reformed into the Confederation of the Rhine. He gave each of his relatives a kingdom. Then moved his idea of the Continental System, because now he wanted to isolate Britain and to promote his control of Europe, because he couldn't militarily defeat them. Uh, Britain wasn't really harmed because smuggling became normal and they controlled the seas. They also increased trade with the USA and Latin America. This actually backfired against him because most of the countries that he controlled wanted the British goods that Napoleon was preventing with this continental system. We have the Battle of Trafalgar, which is in 1805, and then we have the war with Spain. So Napoleon tricked the Spanish king and Prince to come to France, where he imprisoned them. And he tried to, as he did this, then he tried to tighten his control over Spain by replacing the Spanish king with his brother. On May 2nd, 1808, the Spanish people went into full rebellion, and the Spanish waged a costly guerrilla war aided by the British, because the British didn't want Napoleon to increase his power. This is an image of the 3rd May that illustrates the reprisals after the French uprising. There's an image of that. And then we have Russia. Russia left the Continental System, which made Napoleon really mad. In 1812, Napoleon and his army of 600,000 marched eastward into Russia. As they went deeper and deeper, there were no resistance. They used scorched earth tactics, which are you live off the land, rather than pitch battle, which is supply chains. So as a result, the Russian nobles abandoned their estates and burned their crops to the ground. So because they used scorched earth, they would live off the land and burn the land behind them. As a result, if they got to a new area and there was nothing for them to food or anything for them to eat, and because they didn't use pitch where they had supply chains, supply lines, they ran out of food, and so they had to retreat. And Napoleon abandoned his troops and returned back, and then he returned from Russia with only 22,000 soldiers. Napoleon's can't say that word, sorry. So in October 1813, the Battle of Leipzig is the 6th coalition. They lost the battle. Napoleon lost against them and was forced to retreat. And then after the defeat, the French disposed of him. He was removed of his emperor title, and the brother of the Louis the 16th became the new Louis the 18th and came to the throne. So Napoleon was put on the island of Elba, in 1815 he secretly left and landed in France, accompanied with a small guard. Army of less than 100 soldiers. He sent the soldiers army to fight him. Louis sent the army to fight him, but once they saw Napoleon, they're like, "Oh, it's Napoleon," and they joined his side. Louis the 18th fled. Napoleon decided to attack as a result, the British and Prussians were getting ready to invade France because they did not want Napoleon taking over. And in Belgium, they were gathering in Waterloo. And Napoleon decided to attack before all their armies could assemble. It was on 18th of June, and Napoleon was defeated because he had to fight because he was faced with 2 separate armies instead of one. And the terrain was wet and muddy, but he was still close to a victory. So instead, as a result, the coalition forces entered France and restored Louis the 18th. They sent Napoleon to an island on the uninhabited island of St. Helena, and that's where he spent the last 6 memories writing books, and he died on May 5th, 1821. This is his tomb. And yeah, that's everything I went over. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry about that. Excuse me. Does anyone have any questions at all on any of the content we went over? It's quite early for most of the people, especially on the West Coast, which is probably why we don't have a lot of people today. All right. I'll go over anything else that people want to go over then, for the time being. Anything about what's on the exam or anything? Alrighty then, I guess we'll have to just call it there. Thank you guys for coming. I'll be here for the next 20 minutes, or the next 10-15 minutes in the chat answering any questions that you guys have. Does we have any last questions that are dropped into the chat? Is there anything else that you want me to go over? Art, especially, that's like a big thing that a lot of people need help on. Alright, thank you guys for coming.